Nissan has been committed to the EV game since 1947. Their EVs have traveled 8 billion miles. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. From the North Pole to the Formula E track to your coworker's garage. Put the electric in EV with the Nissan Ariya and the Nissan Leaf. Visit nissanusa.com to learn more. Nissan, EVs that electrify.
As if the McCrispy couldn't get any better, Bacon and Ranch just entered the chat. The Bacon Ranch McCrispy, available at participating McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behind the Bits podcast. I'm still Scott Curtis, and today I've got with me Doc Kennedy from Nashville, Tennessee. How are you, Doc?
I'm doing great, Scott. This is quite the honor to be on your show. I love what you got going on. This is great.
I don't know about honor or not, but it's an honor to talk to you. How about that?
From my point of view, it is.
After I started looking at our scheduled time here, I forgot how we actually connected. So I went backwards and found out we connected on Twitter. And because right after we connected, I started listening to your podcast, and then, I just totally forget things after that. But we connected, and I thought you would be a great guest on the podcast because you have your own podcast, and I want to talk about that. But first, where are you located?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Been here about 2 years now, and before that was out near Seattle for almost 10 years.
Okay. How long have you been doing stand-up?
I did my first set about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Let me think about that. I guess now it's been almost 12 years ago.
Holy cow. You don't look that old.
Thank you. Yeah, I was a toddler when I did my first set.
Yeah, great. And you've been in Nashville for a couple of years. I have actually done a couple open mics in Nashville because my company's got a office down in Columbia. Which is a little bit south of Nashville. So I went up once and did an open mic on a Tuesday at a bar that I can't remember the name, but it's not there anymore. I know it was one that Chad Ryden, one of his deals. So I did that one. And then just this summer, I was in Nashville with my wife, and who else was I with? Maybe it was just my wife and I did open mic. I think it's called the Viper Room, East Side.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did one there too. Met some nice people there. Yeah.
Yeah, those are interesting spots. What I love about Nashville is the comedy scene is pretty tight.
Yeah.
They're all pretty supportive of each other. And, most nights you can get on stage up to 2 times.
Yeah. I noticed that there's like a Nashville stand-up scene or something like that, the website, and I would always look at the open mics, and there was usually one that did an early and one that did a late, just about every night. So that was cool.
Yeah, they do a great job of staggering them, and actually, there's some nights where you can get up 3 times if you work it out right.
Right.
If things all pan out.
And open mics are definitely a must when you're working out new material.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I just love being around the other comics. You know, just getting to hang out with people whose brains are as wacky as your own.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So
hear how they're doing, and just keeping up, it's it's a good environment.
Most definitely. When you, so you started, 10, 12 years ago, what was it that prompted you to start doing stand-up?
I went through a rough stretch and, needed some laughs in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I'm a Christian, and I felt like the Lord was working in my life, but I still needed laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really lacking in that department. And it was at that time, Seinfeld was being released on DVD.
Yeah.
And so I started buying Seinfeld, and it just touched my heart so much, and it really brought a lot of life into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so through that, I was living in a really small town and didn't know how to start, but I thought maybe I could use that. Really, I wanted to use stand-up to get into acting.
Uh-huh.
But I did an online course, and this was, back before they were doing video and stuff. So I did it was all through PDF format.
Uh-huh.
But I went through that, and it was really helpful. And then 2 years later, I moved out towards Seattle. I did my first set out there, and didn't take too long before I got frustrated and quit.
Uh-huh. A lot of people do that, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, but like I said, my goal was to get into acting, and I didn't know, I'm out from the sticks, and I don't know how to do that. But I saw, comedians taking their stuff and becoming actors, Tim Allen, Drew Carey, Seinfeld.
Right.
I just thought, well, maybe there's that in, I don't know, and went for it. But, what was interesting, Scott, was even though I got frustrated, it was the reason I got frustrated was because I wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And it was stupid of me to think that I should be perfect. But that's where I was. And so but I just couldn't shake it either. I mean, you get that bug. And now for me, and I'll still do acting, but it's really hard to be a live audience, and just knowing that whatever happens that night, good, bad, or in between, it's never going to be duplicated.
Right.
That you have a special time with some people, and you all get to share.
Yeah, no doubt. It's usually one of two extremes that I see, that either you get frustrated because you can't be perfect, or you think you're perfect and you're frustrated because you're not a big star.
That's it.
Yeah. And
for sure.
Yeah, I've always been on more on your end, frustrated because I'm not perfect, and you really have to just understand that you just need to be better than the last time you performed, and try to always do as good as you can, and not worry about how well everybody else is doing, and not really take it so hard if your joke bombed, or if you said it wrong or whatever. It's just something that happens.
Well, and it was stupid too, because it was a room with like 7 guests.
Yeah.
So I just set the bar so high for myself, I wasn't going to be able to reach it.
Yeah.
You just do young, dumb stuff. But I don't regret the time in between either. I learned a lot. And actually, a lot of the skills I learned in between are what's enabled me to podcast. So there was a lot of good that came out of that time. And I, about 4 or 5 years ago, I got back on stage serious and been here since.
How long was your hiatus then?
It was years. But every year I would do like 1 or 2 sets average.
Yeah.
And get mad and quit again. And so, but the breakthrough for me, I heard a comedian, and he was speaking at a leadership conference. And I heard this comic say that he had this epiphany. He was off stage one night, about to go on stage. And he said, up till then, it had been about him getting laughs. And he had this epiphany that it wasn't about him getting laughs. It was about him giving people the opportunity to laugh.
Oh.
Well, that registered with me. And it was like freedom.
Right.
It was total freedom for me, because now I had the room to fail, because it wasn't about me getting laughs. It was about me giving people the opportunity to laugh,
right.
Which was, if we dial back to when I first, bought the online course and all that stuff, that was my original intent.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere along the way, I got in the way.
Right. I think once you've performed a few times as a stand-up, you start to think of the audience as something different than what they are. All the things that are pent up inside of you, all your self-doubt and stuff like that, just manifests itself, and you think the audience is almost there to judge you, and that's not what it is at all. First, that they don't care what kind of a day you had because they had a bad day too. Second, they just came to laugh, and if you can get that across and totally erase everything else from your mind, just giving them the opportunity to laugh, like you said, then you always have a better set because you're a lot more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, and one of my strong suits is crowd work. Mm-hmm. But you can't do crowd work if you're looking for perfection.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, all of a sudden, I was free to really be more of myself.
Uh-huh. So, crowd work, that's interesting, and I watched a few of your videos before we got started here. You rely pretty heavily on the crowd work, and that is a really jagged edge because and I've never done it a whole lot. I've done it a few times, but tell me what your process is. Do you have things in mind before you start doing the crowd work, and you can fit those in? Tell me a little bit about that and how you make that work.
Yeah, I like to try to find bits that I can incorporate the audience with.
Uh-huh.
So one of the videos I have online is a bucket list bit.
Yeah,
and I'll ask people what's on your bucket list. And a friend of mine here, we did a set together the other night, and he said, can I just make a comment? If you do that bucket list thing, there's a chance that their response is going to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
And well, my response to that is not everything has to be hilarious.
Right.
And so if we can flip that to something positive, we can still make it funny because I have my punch already set up.
Right.
But we can still do something positive in this, and maybe help someone, help the audience in some way.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I kind of look at it. It's okay to have a point in the show where it's not wall-to-wall laughs.
Right.
Yeah. So, I do stuff like that. And then, I do a lot of one-liners, and sometimes I'll ask questions off of those, and those work well. I like to try to find stuff, but only if it's going to work great. And I don't do crowd work throughout the whole show. I just do it kind of sporadic.
Mm-hmm.
But I love people, so why wouldn't I want to get to know them?
Right. I was last year. I was at a Paula Poundstone show up in Michigan with my wife, and she does a lot of crowd work, and I didn't know that because I'd never seen her live before. And it's amazing what you can get going just by talking to people. And
yeah,
in a lot of comedy shows, the audience wants to be part of the act anyway. So if you give them that opportunity, then it's a very memorable experience for them.
Well, I never have hecklers.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because I don't believe in them. Because I'm already looking for them to engage anyhow.
Yeah.
So you have nothing on me. I'm looking for you. It's fine. And once you've already established that you're willing to go out there, and you can spin it back, and say like, I'm in charge, whatever.
Right.
You can bring it back if you need to.
Yeah.
But most of the time, they're going to be on board anyhow. They just want to enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a recollection of the best time you had in front of an audience that you just walked out of there walking on cloud nine and just feeling the best?
Well, that's a great question, Scott. I don't know. I guess like most folks, I think of the worst ones.
That's it's kind of why I asked that question, because I ask a lot of people what their worst experience was, and I was experimenting with you. You're kind of a lab experiment for me. I wanted to see if somebody could recall the best experience they ever had.
Well, I have a lot of favorite moments. I did a show out in Washington State at the military base there. Being able to entertain troops and their families, that was awesome. That was a great experience. I did crowd work there, and there were some little kids, and they were involved in the crowd work, and that turned out that went great. So being able to serve people that serve us, that's an awesome moment. Even like just different people that show up and they tell you that, they needed a laugh that night, or, stuff like that. I hang on to the little things more than the big ones, I guess. And just kind of, there was a show recently, and I'm trying to remember exactly where it was, but yeah, it's just, I feel like every show has enough good in it that I don't really feel like I'm still fairly, I'm not as hard on myself as I used to be, but I see people saying, "Oh, this guy's killing on stage." Well, what's the definition of killing on stage now? It's gotten kind of watered down, and I don't feel like I'm ever at that point. I want that bar to always be super high, and it doesn't matter how good I'm getting. I want it to keep pushing further.
Right. Do you ever second guess some of your bits, like especially if they have multiple tags and you've got one tag that just hits all the time, and you do it in front of a different audience, and that one doesn't hit, but a different tag hits, and you don't know what to think?
Oh yeah,
it's the weirdest. It's the weirdest thing. I've got one joke that's got 3 tags, and it's always been a build. Tag 1's pretty good, tag 2's better, and tag 3's the best. And I have recently done it a couple times, and I could easily flip flop them, just go from 3, 2, 1, and it probably would have been better. And it's really weird, and you can't really. That's something you can't read. You can read an audience as to what type of material you should be doing.
Sure.
But you can't really, if you're going to do this material and it's got 3 tags, you don't know which way to go. And sometimes it's kind of a downer when that last tag just kind of falls flat when the first 2 were so good.
Yeah. I try not to read too much into it. If it happens multiple times, then I will. But most of the time I just accept responsibility. Maybe I didn't deliver it right. There was obviously some sort of disconnect between me and the audience. So what can I do to help remedy that, to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Right. Now,
I hear comics blame the audience all the time, and I think that's just kind of a mistake. There can be a bad room, but they're few and far between. If you're good, you should be able to get some laughs.
Right. And it's hard. It's hard to blame the audience when you go back to the thing that, they just came here to laugh. And if you're not giving them the right stuff to laugh at, then it's not really their fault.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Unless you're doing a gig where they started drinking at 8:00 in the morning and you go on at 5:00 and they start throwing beer bottles at you, then that's not as good.
That sounds like a personal experience there, Scott.
Not me, but a friend.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. But
I also haven't done cruise ships, and I think that would be tough. Because you're seeing the same people over and over.
Yeah. I've got a friend that has done a lot of cruises, and he absolutely loves them. And you got to get into that groove, and you got to know what to say. I mean, that's obviously a place where, you know, you've got one type of comedy, and you got to do your crowd work and stuff like that on a cruise ship, so everybody feels special and all that. But
sure.
Yeah, he loves doing it.
Well, I've also heard those stories of guys being helicoptered off the ship.
Yeah,
so.
There have been. You're never going to see me on one because I am way too claustrophobic. So it's just
gotcha.
ain't going to happen. I'm 6'5", and those ceilings are way too low.
Yeah. That can be a long time out there, you know, 30 days.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time to either make friends or make a lot of people resentful towards you.
Yeah, no doubt. On your, I read your webpage pretty closely. You mentioned that you do quite a few church type of presentations and shows. Walk me through that on how that works, and you know what your act is like and stuff like that, and for a church audience.
Yeah, I do the same act that I would at a club.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. You know, it's just like a club. I mean, I really feel like that, minus the booze,
mm-hmm.
you know, and so I just treat it like any other show that I would do, because I do corporate also.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all the same to me. Just let me show up,
mm-hmm.
and that's it. But yeah, sometimes they'll have, you know, like, we don't want you to talk about this topic or something like that. But those are few and far between, and most of the time, you know, I'm not touching those subjects anyway. And you mentioned reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going through a stretch where there's been a tragedy or something, maybe talking about death isn't the best choice.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Just being cautious of what's going on in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy them. You know, it's because I grew up in a family that loved to laugh. Mm-hmm. And the more that I can do that for families, I just appreciate that opportunity to be able to entertain not just the adults, but the entire family.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You make no bones about being a Christian. I mean, you talk about that on your website, and you mentioned it earlier in the podcast. Do you feel like that in this day and age, a Christian comic maybe has a tougher way to go than somebody who is totally secular and doesn't talk about that at all?
Well, if I worked blue, I could get some easier laughs. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like Brian Regan, he's working clean, mm-hmm. and he's arguably the most famous comic out there.
Right.
So it's, you know, it's just more work.
Mm-hmm.
But I would want to work clean regardless, because there's more opportunity.
Right.
You know, you can get more gigs if you're working clean. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll take a clean comic to a church show who's not necessarily a believer, but they're going to bring laughs. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's kind of I don't really feel, if I bring it forward, you know, mm-hmm. then, you know, you can't get anything on me.
Right.
And you're going to enjoy it anyway. I mean, it's no big deal.
Right. You're one of the, so I've talked to several comics, I'm clean too. And, we mentioned talking, Joel Byers was your first guest, and I just interviewed him. His interview hasn't gone up yet, but we talked about clean comedy and how, like in my case, it's not necessarily who I am. You know, my text messages probably contain worse language than you hear from most comics, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to really appeal to a wide range of people. And I guess what really what really nailed that for me is when I watched the Nate Bargatze special on Netflix. Yeah. And then I've seen him live twice since I saw that special. Same show twice. because I really liked it. But the thing I did is the first time we saw him, I think was in Indianapolis. We went to see him in Indy. And I looked at the audience, and that audience was the most wide-ranging cultures, people, ages that I've seen at a comedy concert in a long time. And when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, he's got it right. And that solidified my belief in the fact that you can do clean and still be considered a good comic.
Yeah. Well, and you can still go after touchy subjects.
Oh, yeah.
When you're clean, I talk politics in my act, and that's kind of considered a no-no right now. It is if you're on the wrong side.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, that's a bigger deal, it seems, than being a Christian, being and being public with that than saying that you're conservative or anything like that. So, but I'll take those challenges because a good joke is still a good joke, and it doesn't matter. You know, now it's not. So I'll poke fun at all sides. It's not my fault that the left tends to have more opportunity. So that's just how it is. I mean, if you took those same characters, and I just kind of view them as characters for my act. If I took those same characters and put them on the other side of the aisle, I would be going after them the same way I am right now.
Right.
Because it's the premise that I'm looking at. I need that premise to set up the punch.
Right.
So if you're providing the premise, then I'm just going to take it.
Right.
I tried switching one up last week. I tried switching it up. It was a Nancy Pelosi joke. And I'm like, well, you know what? I don't have enough going after the other side. I'm going to switch out Pelosi for Trump. And it failed.
Yeah.
It just failed. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules here. I just follow them. And the rules is if they laugh, it's good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're in a situation right now where if you mention Trump in any way, no matter which side the people are on, they just don't like it. So it just it falls flat.
It does fall flat. Well, it's kind of a sticky subject, and I kind of feel like after we get through this weird coronavirus situation, well, my hope is that people will lighten up and we can, just get back to enjoying life. But obviously life's too short. So let's laugh at the things that we can.
Yeah, no doubt.
And just enjoy it.
Yeah. And realize that all of us are right and none of us are right. So
yeah, exactly.
we are our own right, whatever works for us.
Yeah.
So when you, one of the things that I found fascinating about you was your podcast, and the podcast for everybody, so you can look it up, is Free to Laugh, and I have found it on about every podcast app I've tried. Spotify is the one I use the most just because it's easy, and I've got my music queued up anyway, so I can listen to an episode and listen to music. So I listen mostly through Spotify, and it seemed to me that this podcast came from, first of all, you are passionate about comedy. You're passionate about subject matter, and you are passionate about how political correctness has maybe changed the playing field for comics and comedy in general. And I was impressed by that. I was also impressed that you can put out a 50-minute episode or a 20-minute episode, and all of them have good content. And I really like those 20-minute episodes because that's exactly how long it takes me to get to work. So I'm
trying to keep them shorter.
Yeah, and I really appreciate some of the viewpoints that come from that and some of the perspectives. So can you tell me how the podcast came about? what you're doing with it and where you want that to go?
Yeah. And this might be good for comics that are looking to start a podcast. I had produced 2 shows previously myself. I had one, the first podcast I ever produced, it was called Dream Warriors. And I just brought on people talking about their dreams and goals. And then I did a show after that. I wanted to niche it down. And so I was doing film production at the time. And so it was called Filmmakers Focus. And I just brought on anybody that was in the filmmaking industry. And that went pretty well. And I quit that one when I moved to Nashville. So then, I wanted to do something that was in the comedy world. And I started out by recording episodes where I was just having a conversation. But it wasn't as niche as I thought it should be. Because some of the feedback that I've gotten, when you went to see Nate, was Brian Bates opening for him?
Yeah.
Okay. So Brian's a good friend of mine.
Both times. Yeah.
Okay. So Brian told me that, some of the bigger comics, they won't do podcast interviews unless they're more niche, because they end up just doing this open-ended conversation that kind of goes nowhere. See, like, you have an angle. You're even though it feels more conversational, you still know where you're going to go.
Yeah.
You're blazing the trail and you know where it's going. If you do something where there's no end in sight, it's really hard to want to jump on that bandwagon.
Right.
So as I kept recording, just trying different stuff, I ended up niching down on comedy and political correctness. And that's worked out great. That lots of comics want to come on. They all have stories to share. And so that's how that happened. But it was a series of failures that I never released. I recorded a bunch of episodes that just never will be aired. But it was all in getting to this place where I wanted to.
Now, have you learned anything, or has anything changed your mind even a little bit in the time that you've talked to folks? Because you've got quite a few episodes out. What episode are you on now?
I think we're at 16.
Yeah, so
somewhere in there.
You're ahead of me. So yeah, you got more than I do.
Yeah, we took a little time off. I moved last week, and so that put a little hiatus on it. But I'm taking advantage of the quarantine here.
Yeah, no doubt. So
I'm getting as many episodes pumped out as possible.
Yeah.
I know comics are available. So.
Yeah. I'm doing the same thing. Reaching out to some folks who either didn't respond or responded that they were too busy or whatever, and hopefully that'll work. I've got Michael Ian Black on the hook to do an interview in May, cool. So we'll see if that happens.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he might be back on the road by then.
Yeah, I know. He's got a book coming out in May, so I thought maybe that would be a decent plug for the book.
Yeah. Well, again, when you're talking about how to book people, for people that are into podcasting, that's a great way to go about it. Like, if they have something that they need to plug, get them on.
Yeah.
Because they're looking to get all the publicity they can.
Yeah. So let's brainstorm that. So almost every comic wants to put a podcast out, at least everyone that I talk to, and some of them have one and some of them don't. So let's talk about how you've gotten your guests. I want to compare notes here. So
sure.
The guest you've got versus a guest I've got. How did you reach out? How did you get people to get on the podcast?
Yeah. I just reached out to them directly. So I find it interesting that you and I connected through Twitter because I'm not on there a whole ton.
Yeah.
But somebody had hit like on your tweet saying that you were looking for comedians to be on your podcast. And I just happened to be in this zone of being like, I need to be a guest on podcasts.
Yeah.
So it was on my brain for sure.
Yeah.
And so that's how we connected, and so I really think just trying, just getting the word out, just bugging people. And like I said, like, I think the next 3 weeks or so is a really good time to bust them out.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, if you haven't started your show, now is also a good time to do that because you have time.
And one thing to remember is if you do a recording that, I think both of our episodes can stand on their own as far as they don't have a expiration date on them, and you can listen to them at about any time. Your first episode.
I hope mine expires.
Yeah,
I hope mine expires because that means political correctness is
no
thing of the past. So.
But at least they're there for posterity.
They are.
And people
remember when.
You know what's funny? I think I told you before we started, I did this local podcast for like 5 years, and I don't think I've recorded an episode in a year. And I logged on to my host because I'm using 2 different hosts because I was using Libsyn before and I didn't like it so much, and I'm on Podbean now. And I logged into my host. People are still downloading those freaking episodes and listening to them. I'm like, I had 41 downloads last month. I have the same thing
with Filmmakers Focus. It's up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's still getting clicks. I mean, it doesn't have, but.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of wild.
That stuff lives forever.
Yeah. For the good and bad.
Yeah. So, just to compare notes on getting guests, I've done the direct approach, and I either get a resounding yes, let's get it scheduled, or I get talk to me in a couple weeks, or I get somebody's publicist come back and say they don't do podcasts, they don't have time for podcasts, but if they're ever in the area, we'll comp you a couple tickets. So it's, and the funny thing is one of those people was Michael Ian Black, and I got his publicist and they said no. And then I made a little video on Twitter. It was like 20 seconds long, pleading for him to be on my podcast. And he said, yeah, let's do it in May. And so it's amazing. Wow. It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah. So did he reply directly, or was?
Yeah, he replied directly back to me, and
so that might be.
Yeah, I've got it documented now, so I can screenshot it and say you said.
Yeah, and working around the publicist.
Yeah,
I mean, they're doing their job. But if you can talk to somebody straight up, that's always best.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. Then I'll probably share the email from his publicist. I think it was maybe Betty, or Paula Poundstone did the same thing to me, and maybe hers was Betty.
Oh, really?
But eventually I'll either get them or I won't. But I'm actually not afraid to go after the big names. I don't want everybody on my podcast to be big names though, because working comics are going to want to listen to a working comic that, doesn't have gold-plated bathroom faucets and stuff like that. I want to talk to people who are in different phases and trying to make a life for themselves and make a career for themselves. So but I always want to get, every once in a while, I want to get that big name in just to get their perspective and also help the ratings of the podcast too.
Well, even more than that, I mean, that just gives you just a better level of professionalism.
Yeah.
That you've had, you can always go back and say, well, I've had so-and-so on my show, or they'll see that and then they'll jump on. There's a fella in Columbia, Tennessee, coincidentally, you mentioned Columbia.
Yeah.
He's got a podcast called, now it just slipped my mind. His name's Josh Belcher.
Okay.
And Josh is one of the best I've seen at booking guests.
Uh-huh.
And he talks to a variety of people. He'll talk to comedians. He talks to musicians, authors. And he is so good at getting, like, he's had Charlie Daniels on his podcast.
Oh, wow.
He gets some big names on there.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just really, really working it well.
Right.
And So he's another one of those guys. He's like you. He's just not afraid to reach out.
Right. Yeah.
The worst that happens is they say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I always like to get someone who will actually be on the show. So I usually don't reach out to too big names. But, and then there's a flip side to that some of the people that have never been on a podcast will actually end up with the most downloads because people don't get to hear their story.
Yep.
So it can go both ways.
Yeah, I watch mine, and my Dreesen episode's still my biggest one, but I see a few that are a couple Chicago comics and stuff like that. The funny thing is they had a whole bunch of downloads to begin with, but I still see every week a couple more coming in to listen. So it's and they're not the biggest names out there right now, but they're hardworking comics. And another thing a comic can have is that can be part of your portfolio too. For sure. You can put that together in your press kit. And I've had a couple of comics say, "Hey, is it okay if I include the episode in my press kit?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, totally. That's cool."
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another plus for comics getting.
I never actually considered doing that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And you basically, I can make the audio available to anybody, without having to download the MP3. So I can make the WAV file available. I can pop it in my OneDrive and share it that way. Then you can cut it up however you want. You can take an hour-long thing and make it 10 minutes with the greatest hits and do it that way too. Sure. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Lost my train of thought.
Josh's podcast, I just remembered it. It's called Uncharted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I took his name down. It's funny how many notes. I actually dedicated a notebook here to
that's great.
So that I don't lose my notes.
I like that.
Yeah, but I definitely want to check that out. The problem with me is I love podcasts so much that it's almost all I do is listen to podcasts when I have downtime, and I've had to actually put some of them aside, so I'm actually reading books and stuff like that too. But I drive quite a bit. My job is a lot of driving, so when I'm driving, I'm obviously listening to the podcast, but it's I get so hooked on so many of them, it's hard to fit them all in.
Well, I'm honored that you've taken a listen to Free to Laugh. You know? It's a big deal to me that you're getting to reach these people that you never thought that you would.
Yeah,
and for you to take the time. There's so many other options out there, like you said, to take the time to listen to what I'm producing. And we both know how much work goes into it.
A lot of work.
Yeah. So every person that listens means a lot to me. So thank you, Scott.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for being on mine. One of the things I like to ask all the comics I talk to, if there were 3 things that you wish that you could have known when you first started that you know now, what 3 things do you wish you would have known when you first started?
Well, we talked about my epiphany, or someone else's epiphany that I rode on, that it's not about me getting a laugh, it's about me giving people the opportunity to laugh.
Right.
That's definitely number one. Another thing, give yourself room to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And be grateful. Just be grateful for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever comes, just be grateful for it all.
Right.
I think those are, there might be a few more, but that's definitely right up there.
Mm-hmm.
And don't take yourself too serious.
Right.
Yeah.
The grateful part is something that I've recently embraced, because when you first start out, or when you first start feeling like you're pretty good, like you could do a feature, you could do even a guest spot or something like that, and you see other people getting those spots and you're not getting them, and you're getting a little jealous and wondering why. I feel like that I went through a period of that, and even, I started when I was 50. So even then, I should have been mature enough not to feel that way, but I wasn't. And I feel like that makes you not as good of a comic when you do that. You need to be happy for other people, but it also stifles your creative process when you're feeling envy. So I've really embraced the grateful part, just being grateful for whatever I do and the people that I meet, and being excited for people who do well. And that is something that I really took away, for, especially the three things you talked about. That really makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Just me being a Christian, and being open about that, people might be like, well, of course you are, that's just what you do. No, I have to fight for it. I have to really try, because and I feel like it's a spirit of envy or jealousy will come in. And if I let it take root, then I'm really in trouble. So, it's just making that conscious effort of saying, okay, this guy got that gig and I feel like I'm qualified, but like you said, I'm going to celebrate that with him.
Yeah.
Not only because it's just the right thing to do, but they've earned it. No matter what you think, whatever they've done what they needed to earn it. And when your time comes, and it will, you want people celebrating with you, not being bitter towards you.
Right. Yeah. That's sage advice. It's hard though, because pride's part of all of us.
Sure.
And it's, you have to recognize it for what it is and be able to understand it's time to put that away, and just let people do their thing and be happy for them,
and really believe that your time's coming.
Right.
That as long as you keep working at it, you're going to get opportunity.
Right.
I've had opportunity that other people never have, and you're going to have opportunity, or you have had opportunity that other people never have.
Right.
I know that because I didn't work the shows that you did.
Yeah.
So it's that simple.
Right.
Maybe they're not the most glamorous gigs, but they were something. And I'm sure that it was stage time that someone else would have wanted. Just grateful for every spot.
One of the things I also learned, and let me know if you've seen this, sometimes you are just not a fit for a particular show, a particular room, or a particular booker. And if you let that, I guess if you let that fester, and not just say, okay, that's not for me because I'm not for them, and go on to the next thing. That's another thing that's hard.
Oh yeah. But once you understand that, like you do, then it's easier actually, because you know that you're not going to work that. So don't even bother.
Right.
It's okay. And it's okay. I mean, there's only certain people that are going to do Colbert Show. Yeah. There's only certain people that are going to do Huckabee.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's okay. You're doing your thing. You find the people that you need to reach, and just be grateful for what comes. I think it's all a gift, and just, especially right now, I mean, everything's kind of being brought into perspective.
Yeah.
And so just being grateful to even do a show. All my comic friends, and I'm sure it's the same on your end, everything's canceled.
Yep.
What we would give right now for an open mic.
Yeah.
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 So just being grateful for whatever comes.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. I wanted to Before we end here, I wanted to talk about your writing process because it's something that I've been working on myself. Do you, first of all, have a set time of day or a set amount of time that you write every day?
No, I don't. I do a lot of one-liners, Scott. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that is just kind of like you were talking about reading. That's something that I don't love to do.
Okay.
But I can definitely find material in it,
Yeah.
And so it's digging through history. For me, it's digging through history. It's digging through current events.
Mm-hmm.
And then picking through my life
mm-hmm.
and finding if I can get one good one-liner a day, that's 365.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad,
right?
And then a lot of times I'll clump them if they're in a group. I'll clump them together and make a bit out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just fine, but it's finding what works for you. There's not a lot of one-liner comics out there, and I don't do just strictly one-liners. I do, regular bits also,
right?
But a lot of them have that setup punch in it.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, I got to find that, and then I'm going to work from that.
Mm-hmm. When does stuff come to you?
In the night, Scott.
Exactly.
It's just all downloaded to me. A lot of times, you just see something and, there's the punch for it.
Yeah.
And so, I was talking with Rick Roberts. I work with Rick quite a bit. He's a comic here in Nashville. And for you comics that are looking to get started, do a comedy school, he's got School of Laughs.
Uh-huh. That's R.I.K., right? R.I.K. Roberts?
Yeah.
Yep. I've heard of him.
Yep. He'd be a great guest for you, Scott.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking about, where was I going to go with that? Dang it.
Writing?
Oh yeah. You were telling me where does my stuff come from? And so it just comes from finding that, premise.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually the punch is kind of right there. I'll work through it a little bit, and since I'm doing one-liner type stuff, I'll float it out online and see what type of response it gets.
Mm-hmm.
If it gets something that's fairly positive, I'll use it. Or even if it doesn't, but I feel like it still has legs, because some stuff is better heard than read.
Oh yeah.
So I can trust myself, enough to know that something might be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times they coexist. So if I get good traction on something, I'll use it on stage.
And not only better heard than read, it's also the fact the audience you have in front of you. Because I've read out loud bits to other comics and said, "What do you think of that?" And they say, it sounds pretty dull the way you say it now, but I've seen you on stage, so I know it's probably going to be okay. So give it a try.
What are they saying about you, Scott?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, is there, I think a lot of that is just trusting yourself.
Yep.
After a while, what's going to work, what isn't.
Yeah.
And so I trust myself over any comic that I would run a bit by, and the audience is going to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So, but try it a few times, don't be one and done unless it's total crap.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course,
yeah,
let that one go. But if you really feel strong that there's something there, go back and rework it. It can be as simple as switching out a word or two that will totally change the bit. I'm very much in the Seinfeld mode of editing, that you just work on that thing until you've got it down. Of course, that said, I'll wiggle around with it on stage sometimes. I don't have everything exactly perfect, but with the one-liners, they're all very much the way I want them, or they're on their way to getting there.
Right. The the fact, and I don't know if this is the case for you, I don't know if something's funny until I actually do it on stage. And open mics are weird because it's, it's usually 80% other comics sitting there. Yeah. And if a comic likes something, you're going to get a, huh. You're not, nobody's going to laugh out loud. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get much. So you really have to listen for those when you're doing, and I record just about every set I do, audio, and I listen for that really close, because if I get a little, out of an open mic, then I know that could be gold in front of a real audience.
Well, that was one thing I appreciate about Nashville is, like I said, the comics are pretty supportive. So if something's funny, they'll laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's the third show, that night, then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some rooms are a little bit harder than others. Yeah. But for the most part, you're going to be able to figure out what's working and what's not.
Right.
And another thing is, I really don't mind comics giving me their input. If they have a tag or something they want to throw my way, that is not beneath me to take someone else's thought and put it into mine if they're offering it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Where, and I'll, some comics are like, no, I don't want anybody tainting my material. Well,
right. Yeah.
I'm all for it. So,
yeah.
Because, the more cooks in the kitchen type theory, that we're going to make something good. And I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
Just like I mentioned, my friend reaching out to me the other day. He's like, hey, do you mind if I say it? Yeah, you don't even have to ask.
Right.
Just, feel free.
Yeah.
And then if I'm offended by that, then I'll tell you to ask.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The group I'm in is very much like that. Well, I mean, we're really open with each other, and we'll say, that joke could be a lot better, or it could be a little better if you just change this, and it's very refreshing to be able to talk like that, because I think when you're doing an open mic or you're hanging out with other comics, if you think of it as a level playing field, then everybody's opinion is good. And on the other hand, everybody's opinion is not good either, because you got to be you. So you got to, some of the stuff, I had one guy, give me a line that would have been fantastic for one of my bits if I was a blue comic. And I even tried it a couple times, and it went over really good. And then I said, I just can't do it, because that's one of my favorite bits, and I need to be able to do it in every room. So I came up with an alternate take on it, and it worked fine. So,
oh yeah, I've done that too. Somebody gives you, but it's just that seed of the thought.
Yeah.
And you're able to grow that the way you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like my comic friends, I treat them like any other friend. The honest ones are the best.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if they're honest with me, and they allow me to be honest with them, the better off we all are.
Yeah. One of the things I forgot to ask you is, you are recently married. Have you been married 3 years yet?
No, we've been 8 months, I think.
Oh, okay. I thought you were the 2-year guy, so I'm listening to a lot of stuff. So anyway, you're recently married, and your wife has been, at least for 8 months, been exposed to the whole comedy thing. How does she feel about it?
Our first time ever hanging out together, Scott, we went to, we met at church, and I was going to Zany's afterwards. And that's a comedy club here in Nashville. Mm-hmm. Brian Bates, who we mentioned before, he was doing a show that night. So I was going out to support, and she said she wasn't doing anything that night, and I wanted to go alone, but I felt guilty. So I said, you want to come with? I guess you can, type thing, and so that's where we kicked things off. I mean, we didn't like each other that night, but a month later.
Yeah.
And so she's been exposed to it from the very start.
Mm-hmm.
That she didn't see my act right away, but she saw who I was hanging out with and the kind of environment. That was her first time ever in a comedy club. Mm-hmm. That was her Well, it wasn't her first time to a live comedy show, but it was her first time in a comedy club.
Okay.
And so she appreciates it. And honestly, I've gotten to this point where I really enjoy her being at my shows. There's a lot of, she just brings a lot of peace. And so it's nice.
Yeah. It's nice. It's nice. My wife comes to a lot of mine too. But
okay, great.
We've been together 37 years, so it's a little bit different, but it's always nice.
Well, how was it for you? You said that you started comedy when you were 50. How was it for you with being married and jumping in later?
My wife was actually super supportive right from the beginning, because I think she knew that I always wanted to do it. And I actually, the first thing I did is my company, I've worked for the same company for 14 years. They wanted me to do comedy for their holiday party. And I said no, and because I didn't think that was the thing to do. And then I talked to my wife about it, and she said, honey, you want to do it, so just do it. And then I did it, and I got the bug and started doing open mics and stuff like that. But, just in the past few months, I did a comedy contest up in Grand Rapids a few weeks ago, and I decided that I needed, we've got one real comedy club in my area and one open mic. So I'm doing the same. Yeah, I'm doing the same stuff for the same people. And I said, I got to get out of here and do this stuff for other people and see how they do it. So, I went to Kalamazoo, which is about an hour and a half. And then I went to Grand Rapids and did a mic, which was 2 hours, and did some other stuff in between that, and a lot of writing and a lot of tweaking. And she went with me every time. And we both were part of the No Sleep Club for a while, because she gets up at like 4:45 in the morning, and I get up at 5. Wow. So it was just like no sleep, but it worked out in the comedy contest. Obviously I didn't win or anything, but it gave me a really good tape, a really good video that I can share and stuff like that. So she's just totally on my side, and she always wants me to push it more than I think I'm able to, and that's really nice to have somebody in your corner like that.
Yeah. Wow, you're blessed.
Yeah.
I think that's important, and so it goes both ways for my wife and I. She's a writer, and she's got some different endeavors going on, and we've got a baby on the way. So it's just being supportive of each other in what we're doing, and getting to do life together. We haven't known each other. We've known each other a year and a half now. So, just enjoying the ride, and you wanted to put a theme on here is just being grateful for those times together, the opportunity. And she loves going to the shows, and just getting a laugh herself.
Yeah.
I did a show the other night, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I really like that other comic."
Yeah.
I got to keep working on my stuff.
Yeah. I get the same thing, and my wife gives me tips and pointers and tells me when I could have done better all the time. And it's good to get that feedback from somebody close.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes down to honesty. I know I can trust her with my stuff, that she's going to give me feedback. Now, I understand that her sense of humor is maybe not the same as the vast majority. Mm-hmm. So you kind of filter it through that.
Yeah.
And I understand too that she wants me happy. So sometimes I might, I have to weed it through some of that stuff sometimes, but it always comes back to, she loves me and she supports me.
Yeah.
And it's all good.
Yeah, no doubt. That's great. Well, Doc, it sure has been great. I'm sorry.
I was going to say she won't let me proofread her book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably best. Doc, it's been great. It's been fantastic talking to you. I learned a lot, and the takeaway is be grateful for what you got and work hard for what you want to get. I think that's the best thing I can take from
just
it.
Hearing about you drive those nights, that's inspiring to me.
Yeah.
We need to be out doing more.
Yeah.
I'm really optimistic in this time that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
you talked about posterity. People might be listening back in a couple of years, be like, what the heck are they talking about?
Yeah.
But, in this time right now where we're all basically laid off, I see opportunity around the corner.
Yeah.
So I feel like every comic out there should be writing right now. They should come back better than they left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I agree.
That's
100%.
my encouragement to you comics. And even if this is late down the road, just do what you can to get better.
Yeah, no doubt. I've actually started whiteboarding my stuff. I got a brand new whiteboard a few weeks ago and put it on the wall, and I'm putting my premise down and all the tags, and then I write from there and decide which tags stay and which ones go. So it's interesting
awesome.
writing like that. I like it.
Yeah, I like that too. I used to have a whiteboard. I miss that for sure. Hey, and there's so much flexibility with that.
Yeah.
It's just been an honor being on here having a conversation with you, Scott.
Yeah.
You're an awesome podcaster.
Thank you.
I mean that.
Well, you're
very good at what you're doing.
Yeah, you're an awesome guest too. I appreciate you being on. Doc, how can we find you on social media and all that stuff?
It's all under Doc Kennedy Live.
Okay.
So you can go to dockennedylive.com or the social media is Doc Kennedy Live. And then on YouTube, just do a search for Doc Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. I noticed on Facebook you got a pretty big following there. It's real different how social media works. It's either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. One of them tends to be your staple, and it looks like Facebook's yours.
It is, and that's where I can kind of test out some jokes, see if they work or not. That's definitely, I put stuff out on Twitter, but I don't know.
Stuff disappears so fast.
But it's like you said, just find what works.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I have a Twitter account because that's how you and I connect.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
So be willing to try different stuff and be willing to be out there, even if it's not working for you. Just have a presence there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You got to hit it once in a while. And I make a goal to hit all mine at least once a day. So,
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Just to let people know I'm still alive out there, Yeah.
Do you use any app that sends it to, like, there's some apps where you can use it. It'll send one post to all the different formats.
I've kind of, I know my Instagram automatically goes to my Facebook, but I post a little bit different stuff to Twitter than I do to Facebook. And so I make it a little bit different, and I've got to make a decision because everything is my podcast stuff now, and I don't have anything about my comedy except for my personal page. So I got to decide, do I want to branch out even further and do more pages, or do I just want to leave it the way it is, or just leave social media totally and let things fall?
I think that would be preferred these days.
Yeah,
but, for the individual, we would miss you, of course.
Yeah.
But,
it's hard sometimes. Well, anyway, Doc, it's been great having you on. And Doc, your podcast, in case you didn't know, is called the Free to Laugh Podcast, and it's available on all the podcast outlets. All you got to do is type in "free to laugh" and you can find it.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, and I look forward to having you on. We got to make that happen soon. I don't know what your calendar is looking like, but we'll get in there.
Yeah, great. Let me know. I'm always great. I'm always happy to talk about my story. I can talk in length about it. So.
Oh, that's great. 20 minutes?
Yeah, you'll get a lot in 20. Well, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
This has been an honor.
Yeah.
It really has.
Thank you. Stay on for just a sec.
Nissan has been committed to the EV game since 1947. Their EVs have traveled 8 billion miles. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. From the North Pole to the Formula E track to your coworker's garage. Put the electric at EV with the Nissan Ariya and the Nissan Leaf. Visit nissanusa.com to learn more. Nissan, EVs that electrify.
As if the McCrispy couldn't get any better, Bacon and Ranch just entered the chat. The Bacon Ranch McCrispy, available at participating McDonald's for a limited time. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.